Good evening, dear viewers of Equinoxe Television. Thank you so much for taking a rendezvous with us on this edition of the 6 p.m. primetime newscast. I am Immaculate Fogwe. First, our major stories. Residents of Gaundere in the Adamawa region project a gloomy 2024 as food prices continue to surge. According to them, basic items such as millet, cereals and maize, which they highly rely on, are now very expensive, making them unable to meet up with their demands, resulting to a drastic drop in the standards of living. You'll be getting the reactions of the population of Gaundere in this edition of the news. And in sports, Equinoxe TV at the heart of the Africa Cup of Nations. A delegation of over 20 journalists and technicians left Douala today for Ivory Coast. During their stay there, they will be giving us minute-by-minute updates in regards to the Africa Cup of Nations. On today's edition of the news, we'll be giving you details of their departure at the Douala International Airport in the presence of the Chief Executive Officer of Equinoxe Conglomerate. Those are major stories. Stay with us for details and more. Thank you so much for choosing Equinoxe TV. You definitely made the right choice. The beginning of the new year seems to be tough for residents of Gaundere in the Adamawa region. The population are worried over the rising cost of food prices such as cereals and other basic commodities. They are scared that this will affect their living conditions this year. They urge the government to intervene soonest before things get out of hand. Malaglori reports on the situation of the population of Gaundere.
Food security and stability are very crucial to a nation's development, but in Cameroon, it is becoming a luxury due to prices spiraling out of control. Because of inflation on basic food items in the town of Gaundere, in the far north region, the population complain they find it difficult to afford 2 square meals a day. Maize is very expensive, including cassava flour. In fact, everything is very costly these days. For example, a bag of cassava flour now costs 22,000 francs. Some women who come with a plan of buying tomatoes at 500 francs end up buying for 1,000 francs due to the quantity. Residents advance the hike in the price of fertilizer to be one of the reasons for the increase in the price of cereals.
Parce que actuellement on vend l'engrais cher et les cultivateurs viennent acheter ici.
Presently, fertilizers are very expensive. Farmers buy for their farm produce, and when wholesalers get to the bush to buy the corn, they sell at 15 or 16,000 francs. We in turn resell at 18 or 19,000 francs.
Ici à combien? On revient vendre ici à 18 000, à 19 000. C'est ça qui augmente.
For this reason, the administrative authorities and experts promise subsequent measures.
We are here, we have an area of around 40 hectares for 2 varieties with about 3 tons per hectare, so we are expecting around 120 tons per hectare of seed.
The increase in the price of basic food items in the town of Gaundere, just like elsewhere in Cameroon, is a disturbing situation. According to statistics, the cost of living in Cameroon is on average 47.3% lower than other countries, a report that requires urgent measures.
And away from that, now we take you to the Nous division, where the population are expressing concerns about the dilapidated state of most health centers. According to them, patients are forced to cover very long distances to get themselves treated. Our reporter, A.C. Luciliengu, has more.
Several medical centers in the Nous division are still in dire need of innovation. The different buildings serving as medical centers are dilapidated. A case in point is the Koutaba and Malende medical centers.
Les enfants souffrent du paludisme et la typhoïde, ce qui fait carence à la population. La diarrhée est exacte avec la saison sèche.
Aside the dilapidated structures, most of the centers lack required equipment. As a result of this, most patients are forced to cover long distances.
Parce qu'il y a peut-être un manque de matériel. Lorsque les matériels peut-être sont en panne, et les patients ne seront pas totalement satisfaits.
Having heard the cries of the population and the heads of the medical centers, Honorable Rainatu Mungwat extended a helping hand by providing support to the Koutaba and Malenden Health Centers.
Afin de faciliter l'amélioration des conditions de vie des populations riveraines.
The gesture was saluted by the heads of the centers. However, they say more still needs to be done to address their plight.
And now we talk something else. President Paul Biya has called on the diplomatic corps and international partners to support the candidacy of Cameroon to the 178th General Assembly of the United Nations. Speaking at the Unity Palace during a ceremony to receive New Year wishes, the president says Cameroon believes in the United Nations and its capability to resolve the many crises rocking the world. President Paul Biya says he believes in dialogue and reconciliation over confrontation and tension as a way out of conflicts which have not left out Africa and his country Cameroon. He cited the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, Hamas and Israel, the conflict in Sudan, that at the Lake Chad Basin, and not forgetting out Cameroon. He says global leaders must prioritize dialogue as a way out for effective human development. And now out of Cameroon, Theodore Goy, presidential candidate of elections in the Democratic Republic of Congo, has filed a petition at the Constitutional Court to challenge the re-election of President Felix Tshisekedi. In Senegal, the Supreme Court has upheld the defamation conviction against main opposition leader Ousmane Sonko in a case brought against him by the minister. This to Sonko is a way to stop. And away from that, elsewhere, the Vatican is trying to calm Catholic bishops who have been reacting negatively on the approval of Pope Francis to bless same-sex couples. Innocent Aze files and details of our international page.
Angry Catholic bishops on Pope Francis' approval to bless same-sex couple. The Vatican, in a 5-page clarification of an 8-page declaration statement, says that the measure is not heretical or blasphemous. The Vatican's doctrinal office also acknowledged that such blessings could not be imprudent in some countries where people who receive them might become targets of violence or risk prison or even death. The doctrinal office stressed blessings for same-sex couples should not be seen as a justification of all their actions, and they are not an endorsement of the life that they lead. The statement adds, there is no room to distance oneself doctrinally from this declaration or to consider it heretical, contrary to the tradition of the Church, or blasphemous. In Senegal, the top opposition leader Ousmane Sonko has suffered a major setback in his quest to contest the presidency on February 25. The Supreme Court upheld the defamation conviction in a case brought against him by a government minister. This to Sonko aims at stopping his presidential bid in the February elections. It was not immediately clear if Sonko still had any chance to take part in the election because the Senegalese Electoral Code provides that such a conviction makes one ineligible for a presidential race. Still, the final decision rests with the Constitutional Council. In DR Congo, one of the presidential candidates, Theodore Ngoy, who came last in the election with 0.2% of the vote cast, has filed a petition at the Constitutional Court to challenge the re-election of incumbent President Felix Tshisekedi. Two main opposition candidates, Moise Katumbi, who came second, and third place Martin Fayulu, said they will not challenge the election in court but are calling for protest to denounce them. The Constitutional Court is expected to announce the final result on January 12.
And now we talk sports. The 2023 Africa Cup of Nations will be aired live on Equinoxe Radio and of course television. A delegation of journalists and technicians left Douala for Abidjan in Ivory Coast today. They will be deployed in different cities where matches are expected to be played. Our sportsman Cedric Chakutio reports on the departure of the delegation from Equinoxe headquarters in Douala to the Douala International Airport. His report.
After the African Cup of Nations in Cameroon and the World Cup in Qatar, Equinoxe Group is once again doing everything to satisfy their viewers, listeners and readers of the People's Nation. It's 5 o'clock and the procession with a delegation of journalists and technicians from Equinoxe Group on board sets off towards the Douala International Airport. They are flying this Friday to Abidjan, capital of Côte d'Ivoire, the West African country that will be hosting the 34th edition of the African Cup of Nations. At the airport, the pressure increases as they must first complete their users' conditions, which are the checking of visas and luggages. Smardik and Gabriel, it's one of our reporters on board.
It is not new for those who have been glued to Equinoxe television and radio for several years now, that whenever there is a big competition, the house also mobilizes to give the listeners and the televiewers a very, very good coverage. And we did it in Qatar in 2022. It is another challenge for us who are working with the media organ, Equinoxe, TV and radio, to give you just the best when we move up to Ivory Coast for the 34th edition of the African Nations Cup that will be starting on the 13th.
The top management, which keeps an eye on everything, gives the final instructions. The material and human deployment heralds the start of a phenomenal adventure to be experienced on Equinoxe radio and television. Effectively, we have acquired all the rights to broadcast the competition.
Vous avez vu le déploiement qui a été le nôtre lors de la 33e.
You all saw our deployment during the 2021 AFCON in Cameroon. We are just going to do the same job for 2023 AFCON in Côte d'Ivoire and satisfy our TV and radio audience.
Et auditeurs de Radio Equinoxe ainsi Equinoxe Télévision, et aussi vous êtes habitués à nos plateaux d'analyse, commentaires d'avant, à la mi-temps et à la fin du match.
Even experts are ready to surpass themselves to give the best of the best.
Nous, en tant que justement la télévision du peuple,
as sports analysts, it is our role to bring in good analysis, not only for our team, the Indomitable Lions, but also for other teams taking part in the Africa Cup of Nations.
Mais également les autres nations.
On the technical side, the up-to-date equipment is scrutinized and the staff is equipped.
Tout est vraiment calculé à la limite et même au-delà.
Everything is calculated. We brought the best equipment for the occasion and we are going to show to our audience what we prepared for them.
Tout est là, comme vous pouvez constater.
The written press, La Nouvelle Expression, is represented by Hervé Villard, who will also give minute-by-minute information to their readers. We ensure our readers of La Nouvelle Expression that they will have all information during and after the African Cup of Nations Côte d'Ivoire 2023.
Et l'après, et surtout le couloir. Et les biscuits qui vont certainement alimenter cette compétition.
As Cameroonians wait the beginning of the competition in Côte d'Ivoire, Equinoxe Group promises great satisfaction to their viewers.
Is Equinoxe Radio and Television to serve its numerous viewers across Cameroon and also out of Cameroon. That's it for the first part. Talking Point is up next. Thank you so much for staying with us on the second part of the news. Tonight, we'll be evaluating Chief Joseph John Gote's 5-year term in office as the head of government, that is our Prime Minister. And tonight, I'll be receiving as guest Abang Amungwa. He is a social commentator, and we'll be discussing this in the course of this newscast. Good evening, Sama Abang. It is a pleasure having you on Talking Point tonight. It's been 5 years that the current government has been in office under Prime Minister Chief Joseph John Gote. What analysis can we make of his services at the Star Building?
Sure, it will go on record that he is the first Prime Minister of the Republic who 5 years, that's 60 months after his appointment, has not been able to set foot onto his village soil, where coincidentally he is a traditional ruler. Remember, he was appointed just weeks after his palace and his home in Jian division was razed down, and the security situation in that part of the country has not improved significantly. So it is, I'm sure, a slap on his face as an administrator and as a politician and as a traditional ruler that he's that he will be counted as an IDP traditional ruler 5 years running. Again, to evaluate his achievements as a Prime Minister and a head of government, we would not actually lose sight of the fact that our country is characterized by a hyper-presidentialist system of government, a presidentialist system which is constitutionally provided for, but which has become so unorthodox that it is no longer presidentialist strong in terms of the office of the President of the Republic, but the personality that incarnates that office, where the position and the post and the powers and the prerogatives of a prime minister have been phagocytized by the hyper-presidentialist president that we have. We are in a system of administration where the position of the prime minister has largely been relegated to the fringes of administrative power, inasmuch as he is symbolically known as the fourth personality in terms of state protocol. But by design or by coincidence, he happens to come from that part of the country which isn't really fairly treated. You don't expect me to say that it is news to anybody that Anglophones in Cameroon aren't really at the center of power as they like ought to.
Then, what do you think must have contributed to his inability to meet up with expectations of Cameroonians? Also, can the system of government in Cameroon be blamed for the inability of some ministers to effectively exercise their functions?
Chief Dr. Joseph John Gute, he comes from that part of the country. Maybe by design or by historical coincidence, it was his turn, but he came at the wrong time. The wrong timing where he has significantly been used as an errand boy for the president and those around him who control higher power than him, where he has largely been used as a sapeur-pompier, or permit me to say, a firefighter, but a firefighter who is rather handicapped, who is sent to go firefighting without sufficient water, at times even without water to like put out the fire. And that is why if we were to judge his successes and his failures in the light of the ongoing Anglophone crisis and how much he has been able to weigh in as an Anglophone elite, as an elite of the Southwest, and as the fourth personality of this country, that is where I would vindicate him by saying he has largely been thrown under the wheel by those who send him to go firefighting without sufficient water, and again, as I said, at times without even the water necessary to put out the fire. And that is why it might be easy for some people to blame him or to count the persistence of the Anglophone crisis, even in his own backyard, in Indian division, as one of his failures. But again, what has he had? What has he been given? What has he been empowered with as Prime Minister of the Republic and as an Anglophone elite to help resolve the crisis on the table? Unfortunately, again, we are not only living in a hyper-presidentialist system, as I said, but we are in a system which is doggedly tribalistic, even in addition to its presidentialist system.
From your analysis, one might take the conclusion that the powers of the Prime Minister have been limited. Our Prime Minister has been regarded by many as a gentleman, but then don't you think it's time for him to sit up, take the bull by the horn, and not letting those under his command to impose what should be done and what should not be done, given that he is the head of government?
It is sheer administrative embarrassment. It is sheer political embarrassment that you find a Secretary General at the presidency who is a minister under the supervision of the Prime Minister, taking instructions, giving instructions to the Prime Minister and to his cabinet members. Instructions that we thought that normally should fall within the administrative executive purview of the Prime Minister to, as the head of cabinet, to control other cabinet ministers. Instructions come directly upon the high instructions of the head of state from a Secretary General of the presidency who has the rank of a minister. That tells you the level of mépris, the level of disregard that is held for, I don't want to say whether it's the office of the Prime Minister or the person of the Prime Minister himself. That tells you how much his hands are tied, how much his wings are clipped, how much even his mental network has been reduced to simply that of an errand boy, an administrative robot who runs errands, at times not only for his master, the president, but for those other bigger animals in the animal farm who are much more bigger, much more influential, much more powerful than the Prime Minister. Again, as to how much he has, it might be difficult for us to outrightly say he has succeeded or he has failed, because we don't even know the prerogatives of the Prime Minister in a hyper-presidentialist system like the one traditionally enshrined. They are not even statutorily enshrined, apart from a few rudimentary, few peripheral activities, ceremonial activities that he carries on, like chairing over monthly cabinet meetings. I really do not think that the position of a Prime Minister in this country serves the purpose